There are storms that don't come from the sky, but from the very home we once believed was our safest place. Clara Holt once thought she had everything: a gentle husband, a cozy little home, and a mother-in-law who called her daughter. But in a single night, everything shattered. One word, one slap, and then the doorbell rang. Behind that door stood the man she had been estranged from her entire childhood, Colonel Nathaniel Reeves, the cold father she thought had forgotten her. He didn't know that this single knock would open the floodgates of a tearful journey, where the past, deceit, and love buried for 30 long years would slowly surface into the light. This is not just a story about betrayal. It's the journey of a woman learning to rise after being broken, of a father learning how to love again, and of a family reborn from its own ruins. Hold your breath, because right after that ding-dong, the truth begins to knock. There are days when you feel like you're living in a dream, but it only takes one sentence for that dream to turn into a nightmare. I'm Clara Holt, 29 years old, and I once believed I was the luckiest woman in the world. A gentle husband, a warm home, and a mother-in-law who called me my dear daughter, at least during the first year of our marriage. That day, the sky over Seattle was murky gray, rain tapping softly against the window pane. I was folding Daniel's shirts when my mother-in-law, Mrs. Beatrice Holt, spoke behind me, her voice light but laced with thorns. "Clara, dear, don't you think you're a little out of your depth? A hair salon manager marrying a lawyer like my Daniel, quite the miracle, isn't it?" I smiled, hiding the bitterness that rose in my throat. "Well, I guess the Lord just took pity on me. Perhaps. By the way, what are you cooking tonight? Don't tell me it's that southern beef soup you always make. My stomach's still not recovered, you know." Her tone was teasing, but her eyes were cold as steel. Daniel stepped out from his study, tie slightly askew, a tired smile on his face. "Mom, don't give her a hard time. I'll eat whatever she makes." "Of course, dear. But I'm worried your stomach might not agree," she replied, then turned back to me with the same fixed smile. "Clara, you should try to be a bit more refined, like those successful women. In this house, you can't just cook and wash hair for a living." I answered softly, "Yes, I'll try." But inside, every word cut into my skin. I loved Daniel, truly. He was the first man who made me believe I could build a home of my own. I'd grown up without a mother. My father, Colonel Nathaniel Reeves, was always away on base. I spent my childhood in small, rented apartments, learning to take care of myself and dreaming of what a real family dinner might feel like. And now, when I thought that dream had finally come true, it was slowly falling apart, piece by piece. That evening, I still tried to keep things cheerful. I set the table, called Daniel to dinner, and hid the heaviness in my heart. "Try it," I said gently. "I changed the recipe today." He took a spoonful of soup, stayed silent. Beatrice gave a quick glance and said, "Not bad. But Clara, you should use less oil. A refined woman knows balance, don't overdo everything." Daniel forced a smile. "Mom, don't be too harsh. It's good." "You're only saying that so you won't hurt her feelings," she chuckled, setting her spoon down. "I understand. After all, she never learned how to be a wife the way I once taught you." The air at the table turned thick. I took a deep breath, about to say something, but Daniel stood up. "I'll go upstairs to review the contract. You two go ahead and finish." When he left, only Beatrice and I remained in the kitchen. She looked at me, voice soft as silk. "Don't misunderstand, Clara. I only want what's best for you. No one wants Daniel to lose interest in you, right?" I swallowed hard. "Yes, I'm grateful, Mother." "Good. Then remember, never talk back to me." That night, as I cleared the dishes, I accidentally dropped her antique teacup. It cracked, just a small fracture, but the sharp sound shattered the silence like a gunshot. Beatrice entered, eyes sharp as blades. "What did you just do?" "I'm so sorry, I'll fix it." "No need. That was a gift from Aunt Linda. Do you even know that?" Daniel came down the stairs, frowning. "Mom, it's just a teacup." "Just a teacup? You're taking her side?" she snapped, turning toward me. "She doesn't value anything," I tried to explain, voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Mother, I didn't mean to." "You're always sorry, but your biggest mistake is existing in this house." I froze. Daniel said nothing, just sighed. And in that moment, I realized his silence was the deepest wound of all. I turned away, tears falling onto the cold tile floor. Beatrice let out a small laugh. "See, son? I told you. Girls with no background only know how to act." Daniel's voice was hoarse. "Please, Mom, stop. No, you need to hear this. A man like you needs a wife who keeps up appearances, not one who only knows how to cry." I stopped at the doorway, unsure whether to stay or leave. And then the doorbell rang. A slow, heavy ding-dong, like a warning before a storm. Beatrice frowned. "Who could that be at this hour?" Daniel muttered. "Clara, go get the door." My hands trembled as I walked to the entryway. Through the peephole, my heart nearly stopped. Outside stood an older man with silver hair, wearing a military coat, his eyes steady and commanding. My father, Colonel Nathaniel Reeves. I opened the door, breath catching in my chest. He looked at me, his gaze both cold and warm, and said softly, "Are you all right, Clara?" I could only nod, tears welling in my eyes, and behind me Beatrice's voice dripped with mockery. "Oh, this must be your father? How interesting, Clara." He stepped in slowly, taking in the room, his eyes stopping on the redness of my cheek. The silence stretched on for what felt like centuries. Before he spoke, his voice sharp as a blade. "I arrived just in time, didn't I?" The house fell into stillness, and I knew. That night, everything was about to change forever. I will never forget the moment my father stepped into that house. Everything, the ticking clock, the ceiling light, the smell of cold soup seemed to freeze. Only his voice remained, deep and steady. "I came just in time, didn't I?" Beatrice Holt curved her lips into a smile, hands clasped in front of her chest. "Oh, it's rare to welcome such an unexpected guest. Colonel Reeves, isn't it?" "I've heard from Daniel that you're a very busy man." The way she said busy, it sounded like an accusation. "Too busy to care for your own daughter." My father didn't respond. He glanced at me, then at the floor where my dresses and shirts lay scattered, thrown by Daniel. No one spoke. The air in the room was so heavy I could hear my heartbeat echo. "Go to the car, Clara." His tone was calm, but the kind that made everyone obey. I hesitated, but, "Go to the car, now." Beatrice let out a small laugh. "Oh, are you here to rescue your daughter from her husband?" How dramatic. No one's being held hostage in my house. My father turned his gaze toward her, sharp enough to cut through the air. "Can you keep quiet for 2 minutes?" His voice wasn't loud, but it was ice cold. Beatrice froze in place. Daniel, standing nearby, cleared his throat. "Sir, I think you might be misunderstanding." "I'm not your father," he interrupted, each word heavy as iron. Then he pointed at the pile of clothes on the floor. "Pick them up, fold them, and put them back where they belong." Daniel froze. He'd lived his whole life with people bending to his will. No one had ever spoken to him like that. "This is our private matter." "No," my father said. "This is my family's matter. You hit my daughter." The room seemed to explode in silence. Beatrice snapped immediately. "That's a lie. No one hit anyone." "She's exaggerating, as always." "Really?" my father asked, eyes shifting from her to Daniel. "I'll ask one last time. Did you or didn't you?" Daniel lowered his head. His hands trembled slightly. I could see it. Clearly he wasn't afraid of my father. He was afraid of himself. Finally he stammered, I just lost control for a moment. Just one slap, but it was enough to make everything fall apart. My father stepped closer, his movements slow and deliberate. Do you know the difference between a light slap and a scar that never heals? No one answered. He turned to me and took my hand. It was warm and steady, carrying the familiar scent of old leather and tobacco. A fragment of childhood I thought I'd lost. Clara, we're leaving! Beatrice shot to her feet. She can't leave! This is my son's house! My father looked around, his gaze landing on the wedding photo hanging on the wall. Daniel and me, smiling wide, full of naive hope. He spoke slowly. A house without love is nothing but a monument to lies. You can keep it, but you can't keep my daughter. My legs trembled as I stepped toward the door. Behind me, Beatrice's voice dripped with poison. Go on, Clara. You'll see no one else will ever put up with your attitude. I turned around, smiling for the first time in months. Thank you for teaching me that. At least now I know who truly deserves to be left behind. She froze. My father gave me a small nod as if to say, well done, my girl. When the door closed, the cold Seattle night wind brushed through my hair. I heard my father's quiet sigh. If only I'd come sooner. I gave a faint smile. If you had, maybe I wouldn't have learned how to stand on my own. He looked at me, eyes filled with both pain and pride. You're more like your mother than I ever realized. I wanted to ask, in what way? But I couldn't. Because every time he mentioned her, there was always a fracture in his gaze, a fragment of loss that had never healed. The car started moving, the sound of rain tapping on the windshield blending with the low hum of an old jazz tune on the radio. Silence enveloped us, broken only by the glow of streetlights bleeding gold across the road. Then he spoke. Starting tomorrow, you'll stay at the military hotel for a few days. We'll figure things out after that. As for that man, you don't need to say another word. I nodded, staring out the window. The silhouettes of buildings slid away behind us, growing smaller and smaller, as if I were leaving my past itself behind. Inside me was a storm of fear, relief, and a strange emptiness. But above all, there was something new, the feeling of being protected. When the car stopped in front of the hotel, my father looked at me and said softly, You've always thought you were alone, but I was here, all along. I just didn't know how to be a father. I smiled, tears streaming down my face, and I didn't know how to be a daughter. We both fell silent, and in that moment, I realized, sometimes a storm doesn't destroy the sky, it clears it. That night, the rain still hadn't stopped. Each drop tapped against the window pane, smearing into long, hazy trails like memories that refused to fade. I sat on the bed in the small hotel room, hands wrapped tightly around the cup of peppermint tea my father had brought up. He sat on the sofa nearby, laptop open, the blue glow reflecting on his calm, yet weary face. The quiet clatter of keys was the only sound breaking the stillness between us two people. 2 generations, 2 hearts once distant, now slowly learning how to speak again. Still working, Dad? I asked softly, afraid to shatter the fragile peace. No, just sending a few emails. He looked up, squinting at me. And you? Why aren't you asleep? I gave a faint smile. Hard to sleep. It's the first night in 7 years I don't have to clean up the kitchen after dinner. He raised an eyebrow, half teasing, half tender. Sounds like something a prisoner would say after being released. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. Yeah, maybe. Then consider this your leave, Sergeant Clara Holt. I'm not a soldier. But you've lived like one enduring, silent, and still standing tall. His words caught in my throat. I turned my face away, hiding the tears. He didn't say another word, He understood sometimes silence is how people embrace without touching. After a moment, he sniffed softly. God, this hotel tea is awful. They call this peppermint? You're too picky. I think it smells nice. No, real tea should be brewed from fresh leaves. This, he grimaced, tastes like hand soap. I burst out laughing. Never thought I'd hear a military colonel complain about tea. Soldiers are still human, my girl. The only difference is we're trained to bottle up emotions until they explode. He stopped, his eyes drifting into the distance. The yellow light from the window fell gently across his face. In that glow, I saw a father I'd never known, not the stern officer in uniform, but a man quietly burdened by too much regret. Dad, I whispered, how did you know to come? He straightened, fingers interlacing, his voice low and steady. I didn't know the details, just a feeling. When you started avoiding phone calls, speaking shorter, laughing less, it was clear something was wrong. A soldier doesn't need radar to sense danger, Clara just the eyes. I looked down, hiding my trembling gaze. So, you were watching me? No. I just asked Victor, me old comrade Santo, keep an eye from a distance. No interference, just making sure you were safe. And here I was, thinking you didn't care. Maybe my mistake was carrying the wrong way. Silence settled again. I looked at his hands, rough, calloused, the same hands that once held a rifle, now trembling slightly. Dad, I murmured, if I tell you I regret staying silent for so long, would you be mad at me? No, but I'd be angry if you ever went back to that silence again. I won't. I smiled through damp eyes. I think I've finally learned my life's lesson. Good. And what lesson is that? That love isn't about staying quiet to keep the peace. It's about speaking up when you're hurt. He nodded gently, his eyes softening with warmth. Then you've grown up. A while later, as he started to rise from the sofa, I called out, Dad, if I ever see Daniel again, what should I say? He stopped, glancing back over his shoulder. You don't have to say anything. Just smile so he knows it wasn't him who lost you, but you who let him go. I pressed my lips together, feeling the weight in my chest lift. The night grew late. Dad left the room, telling me to get some rest. Before he closed the door, he paused and said softly, Get some sleep, Sergeant. Tomorrow morning we have a plan. What plan? To reclaim what's rightfully yours. But this time, I'll let you lead the way. The door closed behind him, his footsteps fading down the hallway. I sat there, a strange warmth rising in my chest. In the darkness, a small flame had just been lit. I was no longer the young wife humiliated by her mother-in-law, ignored by her husband. I was Clara Holt, daughter of Colonel Reeves. And from this moment on, I would rewrite my own story. The female voice softens, background music fades into gentle piano and rain. Tonight, I won't cry. I'll simply sit in silence and listen to the sound of my own heart. For the first time in a very long while, the next morning, the first light of Seattle filtered through the thin curtains, spilling across my hands as I gripped a cup of cold coffee. I hadn't slept well. Too many images kept returning: my mother-in-law's mocking laugh, Daniel's cold face, and my father's eyes, stern yet kind, distant yet full of care. The door opened. My father walked in, holding a small paper bag. Breakfast for you, eggs, toast, and coffee. No more of that mint hand soap tea from last night. I chuckled softly, my voice still hoarse. You actually remembered? A colonel never forgets the battlefield, he said dryly. We both laughed quietly, but it was enough to remind me that sometimes laughter doesn't have to be loud. It just has to come at the right moment to keep you from falling apart. After breakfast, he spread a thick folder across the table. Clara, this is my plan. Your plan? Yes. Tomorrow, we're going back to the Holt's house. I froze. My heartbeat quickened. Dad, I don't want to see them again. I know, but you have to. Not for revenge, for closure. I looked into his steady eyes and knew there was no way to turn back. What are you planning to do? To reclaim what's yours, your dignity, and the money they owe you. I went quiet for a moment, then sighed with a weary smile. Dad, I think Beatrice fears an electric bill more than a lawsuit. He smirked. Then we'll make her fear the one thing she never expected, the truth. The next morning, the car stopped in front of the Ivory Villa, the place that had once been home. The scent of roses along the fence was still the same, but I wasn't. Daniel opened the door. His face looked worn, unshaven, his shirt wrinkled. Clara, he stammered. Sorry, Daniel, I said evenly. I didn't come to hear apologies. Beatrice was already seated in the living room, still regal as a queen. She offered a practiced smile. Oh, you're back. I'm so glad. Daniel and I were worried about you. Worried enough to throw my clothes out of the closet? I asked, my tone gentle, but each word dropped like a stone. She blinked, her smile stiffening. Women sometimes need to know their place, Clara. Every family has its quarrels. My father set the folder on the table, his voice low and resonant, like a bell forged in steel. You're right. Every family does have disagreements. But using a wedding gift to pay off debts isn't a disagreement, it's fraud. Beatrice froze. Daniel lowered his head, his lips trembling. Mom, stop talking. Daniel, she snapped. Don't let them intimidate you. My father opened his briefcase and pulled out a bank statement. $200,000 a wedding gift from me to my daughter. To this day, there's no house to show for it. But I know exactly where the money went. He looked straight at her. 7 days. You and your son will transfer every cent back to this account. The room grew so tense, it felt frozen in time. Beatrice's voice trembled with rage. You're threatening me? Fine, take me to court. Let's see who wins. My father smiled thinly, almost without warmth. Oh no, I don't need to win. I just need the truth on record. And you know very well, military records travel far. Her face drained of color. Daniel looked up, eyes hollow. Mom, please, stop. I'm tired. I looked at the man who used to be my husband. He no longer seemed proud, just lost between shame and love that had never had the chance to grow. Daniel, I said softly, I don't hate you. I just hope that next time you won't stand still when someone's being hurt. Silence can be crueler than action. He nodded, voice rough. I know, and I deserve this. Beatrice turned away, exhaling sharply before spitting out. Well done, Clara. You've won. Happy now? I answered with a faint smile. I don't need to win, Mother. I just need to leave in peace. As my father and I turned to go, her shrill voice echoed behind us. You think this is over? We're not finished. My father didn't turn around. His voice was calm, but carried through the entire house. Usually, those who owe the truth are the ones afraid to end things. He opened the door, and daylight poured in, washing away the stifling air behind me. The wind was cold, but inside, I felt warm. In the car, I exhaled, slowly, trying to sound casual. Do you think they'll actually pay it back? They will. Because they're afraid of a lawsuit? No. Because they know if they don't, they'll lose something worse than money, their honor. I smiled faintly, tilting my head toward him. Dad, I don't remember you ever using the word honor when you talked about Mom. It's different, he said quietly, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Your mother never lied. The words pierced me like a fine needle light, but sharp enough to sting. Dad, I whispered, what kind of person was she? He stayed silent for a long while, then answered softly, a woman who loved with all her heart and was punished by the world for it. I turned to the window, watching the last drops of rain slide down the glass. In the reflection, my face blurred. Did I look like her? Or like him, in the way I hid my pain behind composure? I didn't know. All I knew was that this journey had only just begun. That night, the city lay still after the rain. The ticking clock on the hotel wall echoed softly, the rhythm of time seeming to slow, as if even the air itself were listening to my breath. I lay on my side, the glow of the bedside lamp casting a dull halo across the ceiling. In my mind, the image of my father, his stern face, his steady voice played over and over, like a film stuck on repeat. I thought I had finally found peace, until the phone rang. An unknown number. The screen flashed 3 words, unknown caller. I hesitated for a few seconds, then answered, Clara. Just one word, yet my heart clenched tight. I recognized that voice instantly, cold, soft, and poisonous as venom. Mrs. Beatrice? A quiet laugh came through the line, light as a breeze gliding over the edge of a blade. Oh, that trembling voice! Did I call a little too late? What do you want? I asked, keeping my tone steady, though my hand trembled around the phone. I just want to talk. About money, about family, and about your father. A heavy silence fell between us. I swallowed hard. Are you trying to threaten me? Threaten you? No, just giving you a truth. If you're smart, you'll know what to do with it. I sat up straight, my heart pounding in my chest. I don't want to hear any more of your lies. Oh, Clara, she whispered, that chilling smile curling through every syllable. Sometimes the truth hurts more than lies. Haven't you ever wondered why your mother disappeared? Or why your father, the great colonel, never told you the real story about her? What the hell are you talking about? I snapped, though my throat was tightening. Oh, nothing much, she said lightly. Just a reminder of the past. You're not his blood, Clara. The man you call father is only a replacement. I froze. The room spun around me. You're lying. Believe what you want, but I think you're smart enough to check. You know, the mother you always thought was dead is still alive. It felt as though my heart plummeted straight into a void. What do you want from me? I want you to stop. Her voice dropped, calm and deliberate. Withdraw the claim. Forget the lawsuit. Forget the money. If you don't want this secret to reach your father's ears, I suggest you behave. My voice trembled. You're blackmailing me. No, Clara. I'm giving you an opportunity, she said softly, like a whisper of wind. An opportunity to keep the family you think you have. Then the line went dead. I sat there, motionless, listening to the rain outside and the chaos of my heartbeat. It felt like the world had collapsed all over again. I murmured, No, no, that's impossible. The words echoed through the room, sounding like they belonged to someone else weak, disoriented, lost. I remembered my father's eyes, the silences every time I asked about my mother. Had he hidden something from me? The next morning, I walked down to the hotel lobby, dark circles under my eyes. My father sat at a table, reading the paper, a steaming cup of coffee beside him. He looked up, frowning slightly. You look like you didn't sleep. Yeah, maybe too much coffee yesterday, I said, forcing a smile. He folded the paper and studied me for a moment longer. Clara, if something's bothering you, just say it. It's nothing, Dad. I'm just tired. He didn't press further. He simply said quietly, Today we'll stop by the lawyer's office. If they haven't responded about the money, I'll file the case. Dad, I interrupted softly, what if they ask for a few more days? No, he said firmly. When people say delay, what they really mean is escape. I nodded, but my throat felt tight. That afternoon, I sat alone on the balcony of the 3rd floor. The rain had started again thin, persistent, unending. I opened my phone, staring at the unknown number from last night. My finger hovered over callback, then stopped. No, Clara, don't let her control you again, I whispered to myself. But at that moment, the phone vibrated. It was her. I trembled but answered anyway. "So, you figured it out?" Beatrice's voice was smooth, self-satisfied. "Say what you came to say." "What do you really want?" "I don't want anything but peace. I just thought you might want to thank me, because I know where your real mother is." I held my breath. "You're lying. If that's what you think, why not see for yourself?" "The address is in the message I just sent." The phone chimed. A new text appeared. Just one line. "Nursing home Tacoma, room 7, Veronica Hale." I went still. That name, Veronica Hale. A name I'd never heard before, yet somehow it made my chest tighten, as if my soul had known it all along. "If you're lying," I said quietly, "I won't forgive you." "I've never needed forgiveness," she replied, her voice cold. "See you soon, Clara." The call ended. I sat there for a long time, unmoving. The rain grew heavier, splattering against the railing and my hands. I stared into the foggy horizon. Somewhere out there in this vast city, my mother, the woman I'd believed dead, might still be alive, quiet and alone. And I knew, no matter what my father had hidden, I had to uncover the truth, for her and for myself. That afternoon, Seattle was wrapped in fog. The sky was pale and silvery, like a silk veil draped over the city, making everything feel distant, hushed, unreal. I sat in the car, gripping the piece of paper in my hand, the one that read, "Nursing home Tacoma, room 7. My father was in a meeting, and I hadn't told him anything. I knew, if I did, he would stop me, but I couldn't wait. Something inside me, fear, curiosity, and a strange ache of longing for a mother I'd never truly known, pushed me forward. When the taxi stopped at the nursing home gates, I realized I was trembling like a child on her first day of school. A 2-story white house stood before me, surrounded by a garden of wild daisies. The air carried the faint scent of lavender. It was so peaceful, almost suspiciously so. Inside, at a small reception desk, a nurse with gray hair looked up and smiled kindly. "Good afternoon." "Who are you here to visit?" I'm looking for Mrs. Veronica Hale, room number 7. "Oh, Mrs. Veronica. She doesn't get many visitors." "And you are?" I hesitated, then said softly, "An old acquaintance." The nurse nodded and pointed down the hall. "Last room on the left. But she's quite weak today. You might want to keep your voice gentle." I thanked her and started walking. My footsteps echoed along the linoleum floor. Mingling with the whisper of wind through the windows, I could hear my heartbeat, hopeful, terrified. The door to room 7 opened with a faint creak. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and dried flowers. An elderly woman sat by the window, her silver hair touched by the soft amber light of late afternoon, glowing like strands of gold. I froze. I didn't know how to begin. "Excuse me, may I come in?" She turned her head. Her eyes were cloudy, but within them glimmered a quiet, tender light. "Who are you?" Just someone who wants to ask a few questions." She smiled faintly, her voice raspy, weak yet warm. "People come here only to ask about the past, but I'm not sure how much of it I still remember." I stepped closer, my heart pounding. "Your name is Veronica Hale, isn't it?" "Yes." "A lovely name, though no one calls me that anymore. Everyone just says, 'Room 7'." She laughed softly, a sound as fragile as wind passing through dry leaves. I sat beside her, watching her trembling hands rest on her lap, thin, delicate, yet somehow graceful. "How long have you lived here?" "Oh, a long time, dear. I've lost track of the years. Someone pays for my stay, says it's from a relative. But I've never seen anyone come back." I bit my lip, my chest tightened. "Do you know who that person was?" She frowned, searching her memory. "A woman, brown hair, sweet voice, but her eyes held no love. She said she wanted to help me. but I think I was just something she kept around to ease her own guilt. The room fell silent. Outside, a sparrow fluttered past the window and chirped once a brief, lonely sound. I swallowed, then whispered, "Mrs. Veronica, have you ever known someone named Nathaniel Reeves?" Her hands froze midair. A long, heavy silence followed. Then she smiled faintly, her voice trembling. "That name. How do you know it?" I steadied my voice. "I heard he once knew you." "Not just knew me," she murmured, her gaze drifting somewhere far away. "He was the only man who ever loved me with his whole heart. And I lost him." A tear rolled down her hand, slow and fragile. I wanted to speak, but my throat locked. She turned her eyes toward me, smiling gently. "You have a familiar face. I once had a daughter, with eyes like yours, deep and sad, like a lake before the storm." My throat tightened, tears spilling before I could stop them. "If you ever see him again," she whispered, "tell him I never forgot. Even when I was deceived, abandoned, stripped of everything, I kept one truth. I never stopped loving him, and I never left my child because I didn't want her. I couldn't hold it anymore." I broke down, sobbing the kind of sound that shatters the stillness of a room. She looked startled. "My dear, why are you crying?" I wiped my tears quickly, forcing a smile. "It's nothing, just the wind in my eyes." "The wind?" she chuckled softly. "I've forgotten what that feels like. It must still be as free as ever, isn't it?" "Yes," I whispered. "Free, and gentle, too." She reached for my hand, trembling, but firm. "Thank you for coming, dear. I don't know who you are, but maybe, because of you, I got to live a little more memory today." I nodded, unable to speak. Then I stood, stepping quietly toward the door. Before I left, her voice called after me, "If I could start over, I'd just want to tell my daughter once. I'm sorry for letting her grow up without knowing I never stopped loving her." The door closed softly behind me. Out in the hallway, my tears wouldn't stop. My heart felt like it was being crushed in my chest. Mother. She didn't remember me, but my heart knew beyond doubt she was my mother. That night, I drove back in silence. Her words echoed in my head, blending with the sound of the wind outside, like a forgotten melody from long ago. I took out my phone and typed a message to my father, just a few words. "Dad, I found Mom. I didn't send it, I just left it there. A promise, waiting. Tomorrow, I'll tell him." That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the woman with silver hair, misted eyes, and a smile so gentle it hurt to look at. "I just want to tell my daughter, I'm sorry." That sentence kept echoing in my mind, each word carving itself deeper into my heart. I had found my mother. But the discovery brought no joy, only a quiet ache, like an old wound brushed by tender fingers. At dawn, my father knocked on my door. His voice was low, calm, but firm. "Clara, are you up? We need to talk." I stepped out, eyes shadowed with sleeplessness. "I know," I said, trying to steady my tone. He set a cup of coffee on the table, not looking up. "I got your message last night." My stomach clenched. "I was going to tell you today." "No need," he said, cutting in, his eyes steady. "I already know." I froze. "You already know?" "Victor, my assistant, called this morning. He's been tracking the monthly transfers from Beatrice's account to the Tacoma nursing home. I confirmed it myself. I couldn't speak." He looked up, his eyes cold, but full of pain. "You met her, didn't you?" I nodded. A long silence stretched between us. Only the clock ticked steadily, counting every breath. "She didn't recognize me," I whispered. "But I knew. I looked into her eyes and I knew. He sank into the chair, his hands trembling slightly. I searched for her for years. But then Beatrice told me Veronica was dead, that she'd run off with another man. And I believed her. He gave a small, broken laugh, the kind that belongs to someone who trusted too deeply, too long. I walked closer, resting my hand on his shoulder. "No one blames you, Dad. I do," he murmured. "I blame myself for letting you grow up with wounds that should have been mine to bear." The air grew heavy with unspoken grief. Then, softly, I broke the silence, trying to lighten it. "You know, if this were a TV drama, this would be the scene where I hug you and the piano music swells. Healing, piano number 3, or something?" He let out a rough laugh. I've never liked sentimental shows. But if this were one, I'd cut that scene too many tears. "That's okay," I smiled faintly. "I like tears. They make my heart feel real." We both laughed, a small, fragile sound. But it was real. That afternoon, he drove. I sat beside him in silence, wind rushing through the narrow crack of the window, carrying the chill of autumn. "Where are we going?" I asked. "To the place I should have gone 30 years ago," he replied. The car stopped in front of Beatrice Cole's house. Same white walls, same neatly trimmed garden, but inside, it was no home. It was a cage built of secrets. Beatrice sat in the living room, poised as ever, her elegance sharp as a blade. She looked up, lips curling into a knowing smile. "Oh, Colonel Reeves, I knew you'd come eventually." My father's voice was calm, deliberate. "This time, I didn't come to talk, I came to end it." She laughed softly. "End it? Do you really think you can erase the past with a few righteous speeches?" "No," he said evenly. "I'm not erasing it. I'm bringing it into the light." I stood behind him, feeling the air grow dense around us. Beatrice poured herself tea, movements slow, deliberate, like an actress rehearsing an old, familiar scene. "How amusing, Nathaniel. You still carry that little torch of honor everywhere you go. But did you ever realize, if not for me, your wife would have been dead long ago?" "Dead?" I blurted out. "Yes," she said, narrowing her eyes at me. "Your mother was born with a heart defect. I was the one who arranged her treatment, paid the bills, handled the papers, kept her alive all these years. And now you both come here to condemn me?" My father's hand tightened into a fist. "By locking her away in a nursing home for 30 years? Locked away?" She let out a bitter laugh. "I did what was necessary to keep the secret buried. Do you have any idea what would have happened if Veronica had returned? You'd have lost everything, Nathaniel, your career, your reputation, your daughter. Everything would have collapsed." "You destroyed it all out of jealousy," I said, my voice shaking with anger. Beatrice set her teacup down and stared at me. "And you, Clara, are you sure you want to know all the truth? Some things, once known, only bring regret." I swallowed hard, but stood my ground. I've lived in the dark long enough. If regret's the price, I'll pay it. Her eyes flickered for a brief moment. I saw fear. Maybe, for the first time, she realized the fragile girl she once mocked was gone. My father stepped forward, his voice hard as steel. "You've said enough. Tomorrow, the police will come. All the evidence has been submitted. If you still have a shred of conscience left, spend what's left of your life making amends." Beatrice smiled. But this time, it wasn't sharp or cold. It was weary. "Amends?" she murmured. "Nathaniel, you always believed people could fix their mistakes. But sometimes, the mistake is the only thing that reminds us we ever existed." Her words hung in the air, heavy and haunting. A bitter smile from a soul that no longer knew remorse. On the drive home, rain began to fall. Drops slid down the windshield like tears that had waited too long to be shed. My father spoke quietly, almost to himself. You know, Clara, in the army, they teach us never to turn back mid-mission. But today, I wish I had. I leaned gently against his shoulder. It's okay, Dad. We can't change the past. But we can rewrite the ending. He smiled faintly, eyes fixed on the road ahead. The ending, huh? Yeah, maybe it's time to write it. The next morning, the hospital called. Veronica had woken up, and the first thing she asked was, "Has Nathaniel found out yet?" I broke down in tears. And for the first time, it felt like the darkness was fading, giving way to something fragile yet warm, forgiveness. That morning, the sky over Seattle was draped in a soft silver gray, like an old blanket stretched across the city. But inside me, the clouds had lifted. My father stood by the window, his white shirt pressed sharp, tie perfectly knotted, the posture of a soldier ready for battle. But this time, the war would not be fought with weapons. It would be fought with the heart. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice deep and warm. "I'm ready, but my hands aren't," I said, holding them up, trembling slightly, with a small laugh. "Good," he replied, straightening my collar like he used to when I was little. "Trembling means you still feel something, and today you're not visiting a patient. You're bringing your mother home." I smiled, and tears welled up instantly. At the Tacoma nursing home, the hallway was brighter than usual. Sunlight streamed through the windows, glinting on the polished tile floor. Mrs. Veronica sat by the window, a pale shawl wrapped around her shoulders. When she saw us, her eyes widened, as if afraid the vision might disappear. My father stopped in his tracks. His breath seemed to falter midair. 30 years lost to lies, jealousy, and silence, and now only 2 frail souls remained, walking slowly back toward one another. "Nathaniel," she whispered, her voice raspy but clear. "Yes, it's me," he answered, his voice trembling too. "I've come to take you home." A long pause followed. No apologies, no explanations, only 2 hands finally finding each other, late but warm. I watched them quietly, then let out a soft laugh. "Mom, Dad, this scene deserves a romantic soundtrack, but I think I'll just add the sound of sparrows instead. Feels more real." They both turned toward me, smiling, and for the first time, I saw my father smile like a man in love, not like a soldier bound by duty. On the way home, the air in the car felt lighter. Mrs. Veronica leaned back in her seat, gazing out the window, a faint smile playing on her lips. "I thought I'd die in that place, Nathaniel," she said softly. "But now I'm sitting here, between you and our daughter. Maybe God hasn't forgotten me after all." My father chuckled, half serious, half teasing. "No, it's because I've been so well-behaved that he finally returned my missing reward." "Well-behaved?" she laughed. "I remember you spent half your life arguing with your superiors." "I only obey when I believe the order is right," he said, glancing at her. "And loving you was the one command I never regretted disobeying." I groaned, covering my ears. "Dad, I'm sitting right here. Try to keep your image intact, please." They both laughed, and soon I joined them. The sound of our laughter filled the car, soft, bright, and alive, as if 30 years of emptiness were finally being filled by the warmth of a family. When we arrived home, my father's small apartment suddenly felt crowded, but in the best way. I cooked lunch while listening to the 2 of them argue in the living room. "Nathaniel, you don't need to rearrange the chairs. You shouldn't stand up your heart condition." "I'm not so weak I can't lift a pillow, Colonel. And I'm not so weak I'd let you do the heavy work, Miss Artist." I couldn't help but laugh in the kitchen. They bickered like teenagers. Some sounds may seem noisy, but sometimes noise is just the sound of happiness breathing. When lunch was served, Mrs. Veronica held my hand. "Clara, you have no idea. I once feared I'd never see you grown like this. I owe you a childhood, maybe even a lifetime." I squeezed her hand and smiled. It's okay, Mom. I think what matters most is that we still have time. Time? She asked gently. Yes, I said. Time to bake together. Time for you and Dad to argue about whether to add salt or sugar. And time for me to hear you say, "Eat up, sweetheart, you're too thin," every morning. My father laughed. If you're thin, then all of Seattle must be starving. I shot him a mock glare. Dad, could you not be so blunt for once? No, he replied. The army taught me to speak plainly. Mrs. Veronica shook her head. Next time, I'll teach you to speak with your heart, not your orders. The room filled with laughter. I watched them, their hands clasped together in the soft noon light. And I realized that happiness doesn't always come from starting over. Sometimes, it comes from finding each other again after being lost too long. By evening, we sat together on the porch, drinking tea as the sun poured gold through the window. Mrs. Veronica asked quietly, Clara, do you hate Beatrice? I thought for a moment, then said, I used to, but now I just feel sorry for her. People can't bring pain to others unless their own hearts are already filled with pain. My father nodded, squeezing my mother's hand. You're right. Forgiveness isn't about saving someone else, it's about setting yourself free. As the last light of day faded, I thought maybe life isn't a string of losses after all. Maybe it's a series of times we find again what we thought was gone. My mother came home, my father was healed, and for the first time, I understood what it truly means to have a home. The morning in our small suburban house was peaceful. Sparrows chirped outside the porch, and the smell of freshly roasted coffee filled the air. My father, always the first one awake, was making coffee, while my mother was busy directing in the kitchen. Nathaniel, I told you not to put in too much sugar. I only added 2 teaspoons. Your 2 teaspoons are half a cup to everyone else. I walked down the stairs, laughing. Mom, Dad, you two argue every morning like it's a sitcom. My father turned around, his face serious, but his voice full of pride. This isn't arguing. It's a tactical debate on sweetness. Right, I teased. And Dad, you're losing the battle. All 3 of us laughed. Those bursts of laughter, so simple yet so full, warmed my heart in ways I hadn't felt in years. This house, once filled with silence, was now alive with voices again. After breakfast, I helped Mom clear the table. When I opened the cupboard, I noticed a small, dusty wooden box tucked away in the corner. Mom, whose box is this? She looked over, pausing for a moment. Oh, I think it's mine. I used to keep it with me at the nursing home. I picked it up. It was light, the latch worn and fragile. Can I open it? Of course, but be careful. I used to keep something in there, though I've long forgotten what it was. I opened the lid. Inside were a few small items, a handkerchief embroidered with the letter V, a tarnished silver bracelet, and at the very bottom, an old yellowed envelope. The handwriting on the envelope was slanted, graceful. To Nathaniel, if you still wish to know the truth. The air in the room seemed to still. My father walked in from the living room, his eyes landing on the letter. He said nothing, just sat down, his hands trembling slightly. I placed the envelope in his hands. Dad, maybe this is the letter Mom meant to send, but it never reached you. He nodded slowly, then opened it. The paper had aged, carrying that faint, nostalgic scent of time. His voice trembled as he began to read aloud. My dearest Nathaniel, if you're reading this, it means I've already gone, not because I stopped loving you, but because I couldn't bear to see you in pain any longer. Beatrice told me you would hate me if I stayed. That little Clara would be taken from you if the truth ever came out. I believed her because I was weak, because I was afraid. But not a single day has passed that I haven't thought of you. I pray that one day you'll forgive me and yourself. If God allows, I hope to return, just once, to call you home. Forever yours, Veronica. His voice broke on the final lines. The room fell silent. The only sound was the wind whispering through the window. My mother spoke softly, almost in a whisper. I did write that letter, but Margaret told me she'd deliver it herself. And after that, everything disappeared. I thought you didn't want to see me again. My father set the letter down, his head bowed for a long moment. 30 years. I lived in anger for 30 years because of a letter that never arrived. Then he laughed a trembling, tear-soaked laugh. Isn't it strange how a single envelope can change the course of a lifetime? I stepped forward, taking both their hands in mine. That's why I think today we should write a new letter. To whom? My father asked. To the past, I said. To tell it it's over. That afternoon, I took the box outside and gently wiped away the dust. The sky was clear, sunlight filtering through the leaves, casting golden light over the three of us sitting side by side. 3 people who had once lost each other, now found again. My father spoke, half serious, half playful. Clara, I think we should use this box for something happier, like candy. Oh no, Mom interrupted. This box is for keeping memories, not sugar. Memories need sweetness too, he said with a smirk. You never change, she replied, rolling her eyes but smiling. I sat listening to them banter, laughing until my eyes watered. Maybe forgiveness begins with little things like this, a smile, a touch, or simply choosing not to say the words that might hurt. That night, I opened my journal and wrote, we can't change what we've lost, but we can choose not to let the past define us. Mom has come home, Dad has laughed, and I am no longer afraid of the rain. I closed the notebook and looked toward the porch. The night breeze brushed through the curtains, soft as my mother's hand. Inside, my parents were still talking in gentle tones. For the first time, I felt this house truly breathing, with love. No noise, no drama, just peace. The kind I once thought I would never find again. It had rained all night. Raindrops drumming softly on the porch roof, as if the sky itself was trying to retell everything our family had been through. This morning, the sun finally broke through. The first light after days of gray spilled through the window, resting on the small kitchen table where the 3 of us sat. Mom was folding napkins. Dad was pouring tea. I sat between them, listening to the trickle of water from the kettle, the whisper of wind through the curtains, and the quiet inside me that felt like peace, as if no storm had ever passed through our lives. Dad, I said, trying not to smile, I think you owe Mom an apology for yesterday's coffee incident. He put 7 spoons of sugar in it, Mom interjected, half scolding, half laughing. It was practically syrup. Well, do you want to drink coffee or practice self-denial? Dad replied smoothly. I just added a little sweetness to life. That's all. I chuckled softly. Oh, please. You two, if this were a TV show, the audience would probably think I'm just the nosy neighbor dropping in. Mom turned to me, her gaze warm as sunlight. No, sweetheart. You're the reason we laugh. Dad nodded. She's right. Without you, your mother and I would still be on opposite sides of the battlefield. Something inside me trembled. It sounded like such an ordinary sentence, but hearing it from a man whose heart had been frozen for 30 years, it felt like a miracle. After breakfast, I cleared the table. Mom sat by the window embroidering, while Dad was out back, trying to plant flowers. Yes, trying, because every 5 minutes, he asked me a question. Clara, how much water do I give this one? Depends on the flower, Dad. What's this purple one called? Lavender. Can you eat it? No, unless you want to get dizzy. Mom laughed. I remember when you used to say plants were useless, and now you treat them like toddlers. That's because now I have time to watch them grow, he said, eyes still on the little pot. Something I missed when Clara was small. I froze for a moment. There was a lump in his voice. but also a kind of calm acceptance. I walked over, slinging an arm around his shoulders, teasing, "It's okay, Dad. I'm still growing. You can call this overtime parenting. So how many extra years do I get?" "Depends on how well you do. Then I'll start by using less sugar." "Dad, that's punishment, not a reward." We all laughed. The laughter drifted out into the yard, carried by the wind, a soft reminder that even broken things can end in laughter. In the afternoon, Dad sat reading the newspaper. Mom was still at her embroidery frame, and I sat writing in my notebook, recording everything, the things I wanted to tell the version of myself who once didn't believe in healing. I wrote slowly, one line at a time. No family is perfect. Some homes fall apart because of lies, but some people learn to gather the pieces, not to forget, but to understand that pain does not define who we are. I was once a daughter searching for love. Now I just want to keep it. By quietly learning to love again, I closed the notebook. Dad looked up. "What are you writing?" "Just things I want to remember. For the days I forget how strong I've been. Am I in it?" "Of course. I wrote that you make the worst coffee, but love the best." He laughed, eyes shining with pride. "If this were a book, I'd want my name on the first page." "Oh no, Dad," I said, shaking my head. "The first page is for Mom. You're in the acknowledgments." "The acknowledgments?" He raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For never giving up on me, even when I stopped believing in family." Mom set down her embroidery frame, tears glinting in the afternoon light. "Are you two planning to make me cry all day? If they're happy tears, we'll allow it," I said. "What about you, Nathaniel? Are you going to cry?" "No," he said calmly. "But if anyone asks, I'll say it's just dust in my eyes." I laughed, but tears slipped down anyway. None of us spoke. We just sat there. 3 people who had once been broken, now quietly watching the sun spill across the garden. By late afternoon, the rain returned a gentle drizzle. Mom said softly, "Strange, isn't it? Even the rain sounds beautiful now." "That's because we're not afraid of it anymore," I replied. Raindrops tapped gently on the roof. The wind lifted the curtain, and Dad slowly placed his hand over Mom's, then looked at me. "Clara," he said, "you see, light is only beautiful because it comes after the rain." I smiled through the glow of the fading day. "And maybe," I said, "it's the rain that teaches us how to cherish the light." I stepped out onto the porch. The sky was like a giant mirror, reflecting the 3 of us in the soft golden dusk, and I thought, if anyone ever asks me what family means, I'll simply say, it's the place where no one has to prove they're worthy of being loved. That morning, sunlight poured gold across the porch. The whole garden smelled of lavender, tiny, pale purple blossoms, fragile yet resilient, just like my mother. My father was outside, fumbling with the flower trellis he had promised to finish in one afternoon, a promise that had stretched into its 2nd week. I sat by the doorway, sipping tea and recording the first episode of my new podcast, The Things We Find When We Thought We'd Lost Everything. "Every crack tells a story," I said softly into the mic, my voice low and calm. "Some people have to walk through pain to realize that light never disappears. It only waits for us to open our hearts again." From the yard, my father's voice carried in, "Clara, are you talking to yourself again?" "No, Dad. I'm talking to 20,000 potential listeners." "Well, keep it down before the neighbors think you need help," I laughed out loud. Mom looked up from her flower pots and chimed in. "Let her be, Nathaniel. Our daughter's telling the world our story. Then I should get royalties. You'll get paid in apple pie. Now hush and eat." I turned back toward them, watching as they teased each other like 2 people who had never been separated for 30 years. It was such a simple, ordinary scene, yet it made my heart ache in the sweetest way, like hearing an old song that once made you cry. By afternoon, Mom asked me to join her in the garden. The breeze was soft, stirring the lavender blooms gently. "You know," she began, her voice slow and reflective. "Back then, before everything fell apart, I planted lavender at our old house. They never got the chance to bloom. I always thought maybe a part of my life was meant to stay unfinished. And now?" I asked quietly. "Now it's different. These flowers, they bloomed late. But at least they bloomed." I stayed silent for a while, then said softly, "I think I'm like them, Mom. I didn't bloom in the right season, but I still found the light." She smiled, gently placing her hand on my shoulder. "That's right, darling. No one is ever late on the journey to healing." That evening, we had dinner together, Mom's stew, rich and tender. Dad opened an old bottle of wine, declaring it a celebration. "Tonight marks the official reopening of this family." "That sounds like a business relaunch," I teased. "Well, it is," he said with mock seriousness. "I'm the chief financial officer, your mother's the head of HR, and you're the communications department." "I object," I said, grinning. "I want to be the creative director. That position doesn't come with a salary. Then I'll take apple pie as payment." Deal accepted. Mom shook her head, smiling. "You two are absolutely the same, just faulty copies of each other." "No, Mom," I replied, eyes gleaming mischievously. "I'm just the upgraded version." We all burst into laughter, the kind that's light and unguarded, the kind that makes a house feel truly alive again. After dinner, I opened my laptop to edit the first podcast episode. In the background track, the sounds of wind and my parents' laughter intertwined. I paused for a moment, just listening, afraid that if I didn't, the moment itself might slip away. Then I recorded one last segment, a message to myself and to anyone out there still feeling lost. Sometimes we don't need to find the person who makes us happy. We just need to find the people who once made us believe that happiness still exists. My family isn't perfect, but through the cracks, that's where the light came in. I exhaled slowly, smiling to myself. From the yard, Dad called in. "Clara, what was that last line? It's good. You should print it on mugs and sell it." "Dad," I laughed. "It's called a healing quote, not a marketing slogan." "Well, healing still needs funding, doesn't it?" Mom stepped in, her tone gentle but firm. "Nathaniel, if you say one more word, I'll make you listen to all 10 episodes without interrupting once." "You win," Dad said, instantly quiet. Night fell. We turned off the lights, leaving only a single candle flickering on the dining table. The golden glow trembled softly across their faces, two people who had walked through so much pain, now sitting hand in hand. I stood in the doorway, looking out at the lavender garden glowing under the moonlight. Tiny purple flowers swayed in the breeze, bowing gracefully to a new season. "Mom," I whispered, "when I leave tomorrow, can I take some of these flowers with me?" "Of course," she said with a gentle smile. "So you'll remember that no matter where you go, you can always bloom again." I nodded, my throat tight. Then I turned toward the dimly lit room and whispered, "Thank you for never giving up." From inside, Dad's sleepy voice replied, "Listen here, Clara. I never give up, except maybe on gardening." "Dad, I heard that," I burst out laughing. And Mom laughed so hard she hiccuped. Their laughter carried into the night, soft, real, and complete. This morning, a soft breeze drifted through the window, carrying with it the scent of lavender from the garden out front. I opened my laptop and saw the notification. "You have 58 new messages from podcast listeners." I froze for a moment. A week ago, I had uploaded the very first episode, "The Things We Find When We Thought They Were Lost." I hadn't expected anyone to listen, let alone write back. But they did. Strangers each carrying their own pain, their own small stories. yet all connected by one thing. They were learning how to heal. I read a few of the messages aloud to my parents over breakfast. Dear Clara, I listened to your podcast during my night shift at the hospital. I used to think I could never forgive my mother, the one who left me when I was 8. But when you said, forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's allowing your heart to rest, I started to cry. Thank you. Mom sat silently. Dad nodded slowly, his voice low and steady. You see, Clara, he said, sometimes a single honest sentence can save someone from a very dark night. Wow, that's deep, I teased. Are you applying to be my podcast's life coach? Of course, he said. My fee will be apple pie. Then Mom's the CFO, and you're not getting paid. I'll sue, he said, half joking, half serious. Mom laughed, reaching out to tap his hand. If you sue, Nathaniel, I'll testify. For Clara. Betrayal always starts at home, and always out of love. Our laughter filled the room, soft and round, like the sound of peace itself. In that warmth, I felt my heart overflow. That afternoon, I sat down to record a new episode, a letter to the one who never heard. My voice echoed gently through the quiet room, blending with the sound of light rain on the porch roof. Some letters are sent but never arrive. Some apologies come too late. But the beautiful thing is, no matter how many times we've failed, the heart can always begin again, if only we dare to open it once more. I paused, listening to the faint clinking of Mom's teacups, the soft tapping of Dad's knock at the door. You done recording? He asked. I've got a good line for that episode. What is it, Dad? If you want to heal, don't just speak to the wind. Speak to the ones still here. Dad, I laughed. I can't decide if I should put that in my podcast or carve it on your tombstone. He chuckled, and the three of us laughed until tears pricked our eyes. Mom chimed in gently. All right, you two. One of you is too serious, and the other never stops talking. So you're the balance then, Mom? I asked. No, she said, smiling. I'm the one making tea while you two philosophize about nonsense. Later that night, I sat in my room, reading one last letter longer, rawer, and heavier than the rest. Clara, I hear my mother's voice in yours. She's gone now, but I never told her I forgave her. And now, I don't know if I ever can. If you were me, what would you do? I looked out the window. Rain was falling harder. Then Dad's voice called from the living room. Sweetheart, come outside, there's a rainbow. I stepped out onto the porch. Across the gray-violet sky, a faint arc of color appeared fragile, but real. I raised my phone, hit record, and spoke softly, my voice trembling. If I were you, I'd write a letter. It doesn't need a name or an address, just let your heart speak. Because forgiveness isn't for someone else to hear. It's so you can stop carrying the weight. I added that clip to the end of the podcast, then joined my parents in the living room. Dad was reading the paper, Mom was peeling apples, and both smiled when they saw me sit down. All done recording? Dad asked. Yes, I said. And I think I'm going to write a letter too. What's it about? It's a thank you. Thank you for still being here, even after everything broke. Dad lowered the paper and touched my hand gently. Clara, not everyone gets the chance to say thank you to the ones they love. You just did. Mom's eyes shimmered with quiet tears. Every time you speak, I feel like I'm hearing my own heart. I smiled, my voice trembling. Then this podcast doesn't need to be famous anymore. 2 listeners are enough. Night fell, filling the house with warm light. Outside, the breeze carried the scent of lavender, soft as a whisper, saying, We've walked through storms, just to understand how precious peace really is. I closed my eyes, calm and content. Some stories don't need an ending, only the chance to keep being told, with love. That night, I sat by the window, the golden light spilling across a blank sheet of paper. Outside, a light rain was falling, Each drop tapped gently against the glass, steady, deliberate, like the heartbeat of someone trying to stay calm before saying the most important thing of their life. I took a deep breath and began to write. To myself, the one who used to be afraid of the light. If someone were to ask me what the hardest part of healing is, I wouldn't say forgiveness. It's learning to look straight into the mirror, to face yourself, to see the cracks, the silences, the nights you cried without letting anyone know. I used to think strength meant not needing anyone. Now I know true strength is daring to open your heart, even when you're still afraid of being hurt again. To the me from before, thank you for surviving. Thank you for choosing love even when you were exhausted. And thank you for not giving up, even when you didn't believe there was anything left to save. I folded the letter and placed it in the wooden box, the same one that once held my mother's letter. Now it holds everything, the past, the present, and a piece of what's to come. My father walked by and noticed. You're writing another letter? Yes. To whom? To myself. But I think you'll be the one who ends up reading it. He chuckled softly and pulled out a chair beside me. Then I might as well read it now. No, you can't, I said, half joking, half serious. This letter is for the weakest person I've ever known. If you read it, I'll have to start all over. Then at least give me a summary. I thought for a moment, then smiled. A summary? Probably just this. I'm okay now, Dad. He was quiet for a long moment before he said gently, I know. I've known for a while. The next morning, Mom called me out to the porch. She was brewing tea, the steam rising gently, the scent of mint floating through the air. You know, she began softly, every woman is born twice, the first time when she comes into the world, and the second time when she learns to love herself. And what about you, Mom? I asked. I was born again the day you found me, she said with a tender smile. Eyes glistening, yet radiant, I leaned my head on her shoulder, teasing, So when was Dad's second birth? She laughed. Probably the third after being retrained by both of us. From inside the house, Dad's voice rang out loud and dramatic. I heard that. And, for the record, I survived both of those training programs. Mom and I burst into laughter. Dad, I called back, it's called intensive emotional rehabilitation. Do I get a certificate for that? Yes. But you're not eligible yet. You still put 7 spoons of sugar in your coffee. Later, when Mom took a nap, Dad and I sat on the porch, watching the lavender sway in the soft breeze. He spoke in a low, thoughtful voice. Clara, do you ever wonder if things hadn't gone the way they did back then? Would our family have been happier? I smiled and shook my head. No, Dad. I think we would have cried less, but we would have understood each other less, too. Every crack has its purpose. Without it, how would we ever know what light looks like when it shines through? He nodded, smiling. You really are your mother's daughter. Even your thoughts sound like poetry. And you sound like commands. Maybe. But for the first time in my life, I'm happy to take orders from you. I laughed softly, my voice full of affection. Then you'd better get used to it, because I'm officially the emotional commander of this household now. Oh no, he sighed in mock defeat. Guess I'm finally retiring peacefully, at least. By late afternoon, the sunlight slanted through the window, falling across 3 framed photographs on the wall. One of my father in uniform, one of my mother at her piano, and the one in the middle, me, smiling a smile I had forgotten I once had. I stared at it for a long time, then played back the final recording of my podcast. My own voice filled the room, quiet and steady like a closing whisper. When I was little, I thought home was the place you were born. But now I know home is the place where someone waits for you, no matter how many times you lose your way. And if you're hearing this, I want you to know, no one is ever too late to be loved. No one is ever too late to begin again. I paused, then added softly, And if you've forgotten how to love yourself, write a letter to the person you once couldn't bear to face in the mirror. Mom stepped out, leaning gently against the doorway. Dad followed, carrying 3 cups of hot tea. We sat together, watching the sun go down. No more tears, no more regrets, only light after the rain, shining through every smile.